wonderful group to welcome Ambassador Al-Sabah to Utah, to BYU. We've been pressing him for many, many months to come and visit, and he came without his family, so now he has to come back and visit us again. But I want to tell you a little bit about the ambassador. There's so much we could talk about, but I don't want to take his time. He is a graduate of the American University of Beirut, where he did both his bachelor's degree and a master's degree in political science. I guess a lot of you here today may be studying political science, so you have that in common with him. While in Beirut, he met his future wife, Rima, and she would be with him today, but she is very busy with a wonderful project that she took on, which is to raise funds to support dispossessed widows and orphans in Iraq at the current time. And it's a wonderful gesture, I think, that the people of Kuwait would be taking this kind of an interest in Iraq, given the history of the relationship with the two countries over the past 15 years. My wife and I first met Mrs. Al-Sabah at a dinner in the Egyptian embassy almost 2 years ago. The ambassador himself was unavailable for that event, but my wife sat by Mrs. Al-Sabah, and they spent the evening visiting. It was an event to recognize the project that we have here at BYU of publishing the classical Islamic texts in Arabic and in English translation. And she went home from that dinner and told her husband about the series, about the publication series. And within a month, I had been invited to meet with the ambassador in his offices there in Washington. And subsequently, he has become a tremendous friend and help to BYU in helping us to promote our successful application for support of this project to the Kuwait Foundation for the Advancement of Sciences. Last July 14th, the director of that foundation announced at a gala dinner in the Kuwait Embassy in Washington, D.C. that the foundation would undertake a partnership with BYU to publish these translations of classical Islamic philosophy and science. We're just delighted with that partnership. We think it's going to have wonderful results. And again, we thank the ambassador for the role that he's played in facilitating our engagement there. Ambassador Al-Sabah has served his country previously as ambassador to Korea and as a representative of his country to the United Nations. He previously served in the Foreign Affairs Ministry in Kuwait. He has served as ambassador to the United States for almost 4 years. He is clearly a rising star in the Kuwait Foreign Service, and we are delighted to welcome him to BYU today.
Thank you, Professor Reynolds, for the great introduction. And I just want to begin by saying that I'm honored to be here today, and Kuwait is honored to be in partnership with BYU in the translation series. I think our world misses a lot of information. I think exchange of information is vital for people to know what other people are thinking and doing. And the lack of information, I think, is a precursor to conflict and distrust. So I think this translation series that BYU is undertaking is very important in bringing to the West Islamic and Arabic thought. And we are in this program for the long haul, and I think it is going to be a very beneficial program. I'm delighted to be here with you today to talk about what's happening in our region. Every other headline you read in a newspaper, or you hear on the radio, or you see on television, is a headline from our region. It's good to be in the news, but it's sad to be in the news when things are not going right. And I know you have a lot of misconceptions and probably questions and gaps in information about what's happening in our region. And what I'd like to do today is start with a few remarks and then open up the floor for questions, because I intend to learn from you as much as I hope you learn from me today by understanding your interests, your questions, and see what kind of gaps in knowledge you may have about our region. So I'll start with a few remarks and then I'll look forward to your questions. Of course, today the topic of my talk is the US-Kuwait relations. Relations that exemplify a strong bond of friendship encircled by mutual political, economic, and strategic interests. It only takes a glance over the turbulent events we've experienced over the past decades to appreciate the significance of this partnership. The United States was there for Kuwait when Kuwaiti commercial interests were threatened by Iran in the 1980s. The United States was again there when Kuwait was attacked and occupied by Iraq in the 1990s. And today, the United States stands firmly in full support of Kuwait behind our domestic and economic reform programs. On the flip side, Kuwait was there when the United States was attacked on 9/11. We were one of the first countries in the region to condemn those attacks, and our foreign minister at that time was one of the first Arab leaders to come to Washington to express his sympathy and express his support. Again, Kuwait was there when the United States launched the war against terrorism. And Kuwait was the only front that the United States used in its war against Iraq. As you all know, or probably know, that Kuwait was the only front that was open for the war on Iraq. Even the closest friends of the United States in the region, such as Turkey, decided not to open its borders to US forces. We did. We hosted 200,000 US troops. We cornered off almost a third of our country. We stood against an onslaught from the Arab world because of this position. But we did that not because we felt we owed America a favor, because we did that because we felt America was doing the right thing. Excuse me. Saddam Hussein was a tyrant. He was killing his own people. He was threatening the region. He had already invaded 2 of his neighbors. He had used weapons of mass destruction against his own people, so he was a threat. So when America decided that it was time for Saddam Hussein to be removed, we agreed with that, and we opened up our border for the war against Iraq. In short, this relationship between Kuwait and the United States is a friendship that's indispensable. And despite this record of cooperation, there are many critical challenges ahead of us. The challenge of making this relationship thrive in the ever-changing international and regional order. We have a challenge in putting Iraq back on its feet. We have a challenge of Gulf security in the post-Saddam era. We have a challenge in conducting and fighting the war on terrorism. And we have a challenge of reform in the region. We don't disagree that our region needs reform. We all know that, but I'll get to that in a second because we have a few thoughts about reform, and I'm sure a lot of you will have some questions that have to do with reforming the political and economic structures in our region. Now, I thought the best way to conduct this talk is to give you a historical overview of our relationship, tell you where it's been, tell you where it is, and hopefully be able to tell you where it's going. Now, US-Kuwait relationship were officially inaugurated in 1951 when the US opened a consulate in Kuwait. But at that time, we were not an independent country, we were part of the British Empire. As Kuwait gained its independence in 1961, that consulate turned into an embassy. And the significance of these days are, and I want you to think about this for a minute, of how young Kuwait is. Kuwait is today 43 years old, will be 43 years old this coming 25th of February. I am myself 4 years older than my country. So people tend to forget that countries in the Middle East are really very young countries. I mean, we are, in comparison to Western countries, European countries, or even the United States, we are in infancy as far as independent states are concerned. Anyway, despite the seemingly late beginning of US-Kuwaiti ties, talks between the Kuwaiti authorities and the American oil industry dated back to the 1920s. In fact, the first traces of oil were discovered in Kuwait in 1938 by the Kuwait Oil Company, which was then owned by both the British and the Americans, not in Kuwaiti ownership. Now, since 1948, oil explorations started to increase, and the relationship between both countries strengthened. And starting in 1952, we started to invest, and that was before our independence. Before our independence from the British, we had certain revenues that the British would give us from our oil states. We started to invest those revenues in America. Now, throughout the 60s and 70s, the relationship between Kuwait and the United States was a cordial, friendly relationship. Nothing significant. It was basically based on oil economic interests. It was a respect of each other. I mean, a good friendship, a good acquaintance. Now that changed. That changed in 1987. It took on a strategic dimension. Because in 1987, and that was at the peak of the Iran-Iraq war, towards the end of the war actually, but at that time, Iran started to target our oil tankers that were passing through the Gulf, because at that time we were supporting Iraq in its war effort against Iran. So we turned to the United States for help. And together, Kuwait and the United States, we came up with this scheme of reflagging our tankers, meaning taking down the Kuwaiti flag and raising the American flag on Kuwaiti tankers, thereby making our tankers American property. And that was a deterrent to Iran to strike or to lash out at our tankers. So that started a strategic kind of partnership between us and the United States. Now that partnership took on a huge dimension in 1990, when my country was invaded and occupied by Iraq, of course, as you all know. Now that was a turning point in our relationship. From a cordial relationship based on economic interest and trade, through a strategic shift of that interest, of that relationship in 1987, to a really big turn in 1990. And in 1990-91, we were standing, Kuwaiti soldiers were standing together, shoulder to shoulder with American soldiers, in trying to liberate my country. And of course, that was done. America led the international effort, led the forces, and thankfully liberated my country. And Kuwaiti and American blood was mixed forever. And that event in 1991 altered the dynamics of this relationship forever. Then came the post-war reconstruction period. Of course, there was a two-track relationship during that post-war period. There was the reconstruction of Kuwait, in which American companies had the biggest share of reconstruction, because, again, not because we felt any obligation, but because we felt that American technology and American expertise were the best suited for our needs at that time, especially in the oil sector, and American companies reconstructed or refurbished and rebuilt our oil sector. But again, what established out of the war was a military relationship. In 1991, we signed a strategic military cooperation agreement in which American forces and American equipment would be pre-positioned in Kuwait. And of course, we also bought a lot of American armament at that time. We spent in the past, I think, decade, more than $6 billion on American armament. And we have, some sophisticated armament was transferred to Kuwait, among them the Patriot missile system, F-18 Hornets, and the Abrams M1, A2 battle tanks. Now, what we're trying to do now in our relationship, because now we have a strong political and military relationship, but now we're trying to branch out. We're trying to look at the economic aspect of the relationship, going back to the 50s and 60s, if you will, but in a much more elaborate way. What we're pursuing today with the United States is a free trade agreement, because we believe that our relationship is well now matured enough to enter a new phase in which our economic interests have to be intermingled, and I think it's going to be a beneficial relationship for both of us. So, the way things stand now, I think Kuwait is considered a main ally of the United States in the region. The United States currently has 3 bases in Kuwait. We currently house around 35,000 US troops, which is the largest number of troops, American troops, in our region outside of Iraq. Earlier last year, I think it was May of last year, the United States designated Kuwait a major non-NATO ally, which is a designation. You know, the United States, the first circle of allies are the NATO countries. Then there's a second circle of allies, which are designated major non-NATO allies. So Kuwait got that designation. Of course, it's a symbolic designation, most of all, but of course it also allows us to get access to certain research and development in armaments, and we can acquire and purchase armaments, and also join in a lot of military maneuvers and military exercises with the United States. Now there are three issues that I mentioned at the outset that occupy everybody at this point in time, especially in the US administration. The issue of terrorism, Iraq, and reform in the Middle East. And I'd like to touch upon each of them briefly. As I mentioned, that Kuwait was one of the first countries to condemn the terrorist attack of September 11. And we committed ourselves, after those horrendous attacks, to the war on terror. And at this point in time, we've done a lot with the United States as far as sharing intelligence. Because one thing you have to keep in mind, that this war we're fighting, this war on terror, is what I'd like to categorize as a war that needs software, not hardware. You can have the biggest aircraft carrier with 80 warnings on it, and somebody else might have a piece of information. The person with the piece of information is better equipped to fight the war on terror than the person commanding the aircraft carrier. It's a war that demands software, not hardware. And therefore, the exchange of information is vital, it's pivotal to winning this force. Military power is important, of course, because you have to interject and you have to use it at certain points. But the first step in the fight against terrorism is software, is information. So we're sharing a lot of information between both countries. We currently have 3 officers that are stationed at CENTCOM headquarters in Florida full-time to facilitate the transfer of information between our intelligence services and the US intelligence services. Our law enforcement agencies have apprehended a number of Al-Qaeda members. We have taken drastic measures to curtail the issue of charities, the issue of uncontrolled monies that are gathered for certain purposes and end up in other places. Now, every charity has been brought under the control of the government. The central bank is responsible. Every charity is responsible to register with the government, and once it registers, its books are subject to search, are subject to review by our central bank. And for those of you that have followed the news, we've had some turbulent events in Kuwait over the past 3 weeks, in which we have uncovered a very dangerous terrorist cell that was planning attacks against Kuwaiti and American targets. But thankfully enough, our law enforcement officers, together with a lot of information that was shared with the United States, enabled us to uncover this cell before it killed innocent people or destroyed property. Now, the second point is of course, Iraq. It's a major policy issue for everybody here in this room. I know, because some of you might have brothers, sisters, fathers, mothers, friends fighting in Iraq. Now, as you know, as I mentioned before, Kuwait was the launching pad for the war in Iraq. And we stood with the United States from day one. We still do that. A lot of the support that enables the war in Iraq to go on comes through my country. An important piece of information that I would like to share with you that was not in the news, that happened last year. Last year, between January and May of last year, the biggest US military mobilization since World War II happened, but it wasn't in the news. The 3rd Infantry Division that was stationed in Iraq came out of Iraq, and at the same time the 4th Infantry Division went into Iraq, so both divisions changed places. And all of that happened through my country. It was the biggest logistical nightmare for our country because we're a small country. By the way, we're the size of New Jersey. So when you have two major divisions using our roads, our ports, and our airports to sort of come out and go in at the same time, it was a logistical nightmare. But it was not announced, you didn't see it in the news for security reasons. But I can tell you, I had a lot of sleepless nights at that point in time. But everything went to a hedge. But one thing I did not know until that time was that every division, when it moves out, takes with it everything. I mean, chairs, tables, tents, spoons, screwdrivers. And I was, talking to people in the panic and saying, you're paying double for this. Why not leave those equipment? Because the incoming division is bringing the exact same equipment to Europe. So, no, I mean, the military has strict rules, but everything went out and everything was brought. I mean, a lot of complication in that, but that's the way it went, and Kuwait made that possible. I mean, the two divisions did not use any other country, the two divisions did not use any other ports, airports, except Kuwaiti ports, Kuwaiti highways, and our facilities. As far as reconstruction is concerned in Iraq, of course, we believe that Kuwait is ideally located for the reconstruction effort. We're right at the border, everything is available for the US companies to work in Iraq from Kuwait. Actually, when a year and a half ago, when Iraq was liberated, a lot of American companies set up shop in Kuwait, and work was about to start before the violence erupted, and then things sort of went down. But there's no doubt in my mind that at one point reconstruction efforts are going to be revitalized in Iraq when the violence subsides, and Kuwait is going to be a major location for American companies to work for. Kuwait has also pledged $1.5 billion for that reconstruction effort in Iraq. And now I want to touch upon the third point I raised, which is reform in the region. We need reform. I mean, there's no doubt about that. But I have two catchy sentences that I think you should keep in mind and would explain to you where we are in reform. We want to reform our region, but we don't want to deform it. And to do that, to reform without deforming, we have to adopt a means of evolution and not revolution. We have to reform, we have to move forward, but at our pace. As I mentioned, we're young countries in the region. We cannot have reform imposed on us from abroad. We can't do that. I mean, you can't be, for example, if somebody comes from Japan and says, a Japanese comes and says, we'd like you to reform and take up our system. You can't do that. Every country is different. Every country has to move forward at its own pace, in its own traditions, in its own values. So, two things. Evolution, not revolution, because we want to reform our country, not deform our country. But we're working very hard on that, and the United States is very helpful. Now, before the Sea Island Summit, I don't know if a lot of you remember the Sea Island Summit, which was the G8 Summit with some Arab leaders. Before the G8 Summit, the message out of the United States was, we'd like you to reform, we'd like you to change your political system, your economic system, your education system. Some of the Arab countries did not like that, because it seemed to us that this was something that's going to be enforced on us from abroad. We had a lot of dialogue with the American administration, and they came to see our view. And now the message from the US, which is a very positive message now, is we'd like to help you reform. You tell us what you need, and we will help you. And we are. We've had the first meeting in Morocco, and there are subsequent meetings that are going to take place for us to see how we can move forward on that. So we're seeing eye to eye on that. That was a touchy subject for a while, but now it has been smoothed over. Now, I don't want to take a lot of time because I want to keep the time for your questions and answers. But some of you might well, I've heard this question before. So a lot of people say, okay, now that Iraq has been liberated, the US has its place in Iraq. Is Kuwait still significant as a US ally? My answer to that is a definite yes. As a result, yes. In fact, I think the toppling of Saddam Hussein has increased the strategic importance of Kuwait to the United States in the region. As I mentioned, the United States needs Kuwait as a military base, needs Kuwait as for the businesses that they're going to do, work in Iraq. Kuwait is going to provide a stable, safe, secure environment for them to work through. Again, Kuwait holds 10% of the oil-proven world reserves of oil, of course, and we export tremendously to the United States. Kuwait is also the 5th largest importer of U.S. commodities into our region. So the relationship is still going to be vital. I mean, and we still have challenges. We still have an unstable Iraq. We still have uncertain Iranian intentions. We still have a lot of work to do. I want to wrap it up and keep some time for your questions, but I want to end by 2 quotes that were said lately. Last year, Secretary of State Colin Powell called Kuwait indispensable. He also said, "No ally has been more steadfast than Kuwait." That was a quote. And at the ceremony designating Kuwait as a major non-NATO ally, which I mentioned to you a bit before, Secretary Rumsfeld said, and I'm quoting, "Kuwait has been a strong friend of the United States and the American people, and a valued and dependable ally." So these statements, I think, embody where we are today. In a span of 50 years, we've moved from a very frivolous, cordial friendship based on oil, to a strategic interest, to an alliance. I mean, what we are now, we are in an alliance. And that happened in a very short period of time, and both governments are very comfortable with that. Now, I think I'll end here and just address some questions and some interests, if I have aroused any or arised any interests. Yes, sir.
It's an economic question. A lot of the Middle Eastern countries are trying to focus not so much on oil and having that the only resource and the only economic focus in their country. Is there anything that Kuwait is doing to promote tourism or technology or any other sort of economic indicator so they won't be more so dependent on oil?
Right, good question. Well, as I mentioned, that we're pursuing a free trade agreement with the United States. In the past 6 months, our Prime Minister undertook an Asian tour to 6 Asian countries, and also we are pursuing free trade agreements with those countries. Now, the purpose of a free trade agreement is what? Is to take away the barriers between 2 countries so that we can trade freely, basically. So that's going to open up our economy to American companies. We want to move away from our dependence on the oil sector. And the way to do that is to bring in businesses, to bring in capital investment, to bring in new ideas into Kuwait, to enable our young men and women to bring in businesses, to join in businesses that they're opening in Kuwait. So the answer is yes, we're moving very rapidly on that. But I want to give you also an insight of where Kuwait has been as far as economic development is concerned. As I mentioned to you, we got our independence in 1962. In 1979, the Iranian Revolution. 1980, the skirmishes started to happen between Iraq and Iran, and then the war started for 8 years. After the war, the Iran-Iraq war ended. A year and a half later, we were invaded by Iraq and occupied, and thankfully liberated by the United States and other allies. And then we went into this area of containment of Iraq. So when you really think of it, when you really think of it, as a country, we only had time to develop from 1962 to 1980. Because since 1980, our government has been solely preoccupied, and our people have been solely preoccupied by security concerns. I mean, we had major events taking place on our border, with 2 humongous countries were at war, and we're the size of New Jersey among them. I mean, imagine if the US and Canada was at war, and we're New Jersey. Imagine that, just to give you perspective. Then we were invaded. Then we went through this whole containment period in which we didn't know if Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction, but the whole area was unstable. So now we're starting to think of the economic aspect of it. I've been in the Foreign Service for 18 years. I joined in end of 89. 86, beginning of 87. This is the first year I get economics instructions from my capital. This is the first time I see my capital send economic instructions to the embassies abroad. Because now we feel that the threat is gone. But Iraq's not stable yet. We're not totally out of the woods. I mean, we're still working our way through this. But the threat was gone because when Saddam Hussein was there, Kuwaiti businessmen really were not very enthusiastic to enlarge their companies or bring new technologies because, you know, imagine Austria if Hitler was still there. You know, I mean, if Nazi Germany was kicked out of Austria, but the whole system was still there. I mean, it was a barrier. Now that barrier is gone. Now we're starting to think of, okay, we've wasted enough time, we've been in this security mode for 25 years, now we have to move forward. And that's why we're pursuing these free trade agreements. And I hope they're going to move fairly quickly. I mean, it's a process of negotiations. It's going to take a year and a half to 2 years. But once it's done, a resident of Utah that has a good idea can open shop in Kuwait. A Kuwaiti can come and open shop here in Utah. I mean, no barriers. That's the objective of the free trade agreement. I hope I answered your question. Yes, sir.
Considering the strong relations Kuwait has with the United States, Kuwait being so small in an area which is generally a potential danger to the United States, what would you say now after the liberation of Iraq would be the greatest threat to Kuwait, your biggest concern in the area as being such an ally in an area where the U.S. is somewhat popular, somewhat unpopular?
I think there's a lot of threats. I mean, terrorism is a threat. The disintegration of Iraq is a threat. Uncertain Iranian intentions are a threat. We don't know what's going on in Iran with the nuclear program. So there are a lot of threats. And I think the security umbrella is desperately still needed in the Gulf, and especially for small countries like Kuwait. The United States has to be in the region. We face a lot of uncertainties. We don't know what's going on, especially with Iraq. I mean, Iraq is a very big one. If Iraq disintegrates into a civil war, that civil war is not going to remain contained within Iraqi borders. Civil wars spread, chaos spreads. The war on terror is another thing that we're facing. Now, there's a lot of, you mentioned about feelings in the Arab world towards the United States. There are feelings. There are a lot of feelings, anti-American feeling in the United States, because people in the region feel that America is an imperialist power, is coming back to the region with its own self-interest and stuff like that. But we in Kuwait have an argument that's against that, and we always use that argument. We always tell our Arab friends and brothers, we say, listen, look at our example. We were occupied, the United States came in, liberated us, turned around and said, anything else we can do for you? We said, no, thank you, and they left. Now, it's fact. There are no American advisors in our ministries. There are no American advisors behind our head of state dictating policy. Now, when we were occupied, under occupation, a lot of our Arab friends said, don't go to the Americans, we will do it. The Americans will come in, they'll take your oil and all that stuff. We didn't believe that. And as far as my recollection is concerned, there has not been one oil tanker filled without being paid for by the United States. I mean, it's a ridiculous phenomenon when people say, America is there for the oil. What does that mean? We're going to take the oil and not pay for it? That's not true. It's not true. We send oil to America, of course, everybody's, I mean, you send oil to whoever wants to buy oil. There's a market price for it. You don't specify the price, the market's price. Saddam Hussein was sent under the oil for food program. Saddam Hussein himself was selling oil to the Americans. So that, what we try to do now to alleviate this sensitivity in the Arab world about American intentions, we tell our American friends, look at us. The same thing happened to us. We had 500,000 troops on our territory. They're gone. The 35 that I mentioned are there because we asked the United States to keep troops on our territory. The United States turned around and said, would you sign an agreement for that? And we said, sure. And we signed an agreement, and that agreement is renewed every 5 years. And the day we decide not to renew the agreement, the United States Army would leave. The United States Army left Saudi Arabia. You all remember that. They had massive, massive infrastructure in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabians turned around and said, well, you know, thank you. This is causing us more and more trouble than good. Could you please leave? The Americans said, sure. They left. I mean, we try to explain that to our region. But there are things that the United States has to do to better its image in the region. Primarily, solve the Arab-Israeli question. The Arab-Israeli question is central to everything that happens in the Middle East. Because the Arab street feels that there is an unfairness that's going on. And the Arab street feels that that unfairness is going on because of American support. And therefore, the anger is challenged to the United States. Now, I've been told this before, I've been asked this before, when we talk about reform. And when we talk about reform, we say, well, solve our political problems and then we can reform. And the answer I get back from that is, you know, we don't understand, what does reforming the education system in Morocco have to do with the Israeli-Palestinian problem? Now, somebody in America, that makes sense. You know, why can't you reform an education system that's 2,000 miles away from the hotspot? Why can't you do that without solving the hotspot? Because in the Arab mind, everything is connected. Everything is central to the Israeli-Palestinian issue. It's central. And when somebody feels that an injustice has been done to him, he's not going to listen to advice. He wants the injustice to be corrected, then we talk. That's the feeling, and I'm being very candid here. That's the feeling in the Arab world. Make things right, then we listen. Now, what's happened in the last few days with Dr. Rice's visit to the region and to Europe, there's a lot of optimism. There's a lot of optimism in the region. We have another ceasefire. We've seen ceasefire before, and then we've been disappointed before. But there's a renewed confidence that this time it might work. There's a change of leadership on the Palestinian side. The Palestinian Prime Minister has said all the right things. I believe he's a good man. I believe he will do good work. Everybody's behind him. So let's keep our fingers crossed. But I cannot stress this point enough. It is vital for the American image in our region. It is vital for calmness in our region. It is vital for reform in the region to take place to solve the Palestinian-Israeli question. We need, okay, for our region to settle down, we need three things. We need help, we need peace, and we need patience. HP squared. That's what we need. Help, peace, and patience. And without these three ingredients working together, our region is always going to be in turmoil, and it's always going to be, you know, now with globalization, you can't say, oh, let them fester in their own problems. Now with terrorism, global terrorism, problems have become global. If you leave a wound to fester, that infection will get to you sooner or later. We saw that on September 11th. You have to heal the wounds in the Middle East, and heal them justly, because to be able to move forward, the people in the Middle East, the Palestinians, the Israelis, the Arabs, everybody concerned have to feel that justice has been served. All parties have to make concessions, no doubt about that. But those concessions have to be done. Now, we in the Arab world, in March of 2002, we presented, for the first time, the Arabs came up and presented an initiative and said to Israel, we said, we will welcome you to the neighborhood. We will establish economic and political ties with you. Just withdraw from the 67 occupied territories and make that a Palestinian state. And the problem is finished. We're not there yet. We're not there yet. But we're missing a lot of opportunities. You know, when you think of the opportunities that you miss in the region, sometimes it's bothering. Because, to give you a simple example, if you take a compass with a radius of 500 miles and you draw a circle in a region, everything you need for economic development is there. The know-how is within that circle. It's in Israel. The sources of fuel are in the Gulf. The money is in the Gulf. The manpower is all over the place. We're strategically located. We can make commodities and we can put them on trucks and drive them to Europe. We don't need ships. We can drive them on flatbeds or railroads. Everything is there. We need peace. We need peace. We need peace, help, and patience. Help, patience. Sounds right. Yes, ma'am.
I was just wondering, with the potential free trade agreement, would that also open up the doors for tourists? And is there a concern among Kuwaitis of Western culture taking over, especially on the part of religious clerics and things?
Well, I mean, Western culture is already there. It's already satellite into it. It's already there. Tourism, we'd like to see some tourists, but I mean, do you like the desert? Basically, the beautiful mountains that we have around here, I would like to see great tourism coming. But of course, I mean, it opens the door. Because a free trade agreement means no barriers, which means that certain touristic companies can open up in Kuwait, can start businesses in Kuwait that will attract tourists to come to Kuwait. So I think it will help. I think it will help. Yes. But again, I mean, we're a small country with a small population, so we can open the door to millions upon millions of tourists. So, but I think it's something that we should look at and encourage the tourist industry. Yes, why not? Yes, sir. One more. Sorry. Yes.
Could you please describe the basic family, the standard of living, how many kids?
Right. Well, first of all, I'd like to stress that the family unit in Kuwait is very cherished. I mean, it's a very basic thing. Family units are very important. I think the basic family would have 3, maybe 4 children. The father would have a good job, probably a government job. I don't know any more specifics, but yeah, I mean, regular families, regular jobs, children. I mean, the heart of the family. A lot of emphasis on children and their education and their well-being. Maybe one more question. One more. You guys have to decide.
I understand that a large percentage of Kuwait's population is non-Arab guest workers from Southeast Asia. What kind of rights and privileges do they have as opposed to the native Arabs? And do you see that changing?
Good question. We live in a very strange demographic situation. The expatriates in our country are larger than the actual population of Kuwait. But we need that expatriate because we have a lot of job vacancies that need to be filled. We have very strict labor laws. We have very strict visa laws. An expatriate comes into Kuwait, he comes in specifically for the job he's been hired or contracted to do. If he finishes that job, there's an extension that he can get. If his services are not needed anymore, he will have to leave the country. We have strict rules about bringing families of those workers. Now, there's a reason for that. Kuwait is a welfare state. Kuwait is a state that takes a person from the cradle to the grave, meaning education is free, healthcare is free, everything is free. At one point, phone services were free. You could make phone calls for free. So when you bring in labor, that is a very big expense. I mean, they're serving the interests of the country, of course, by getting jobs, but they're also a very big expense on the government, healthcare. So if you start opening the doors for their families to come in, then you're talking about education, then you're talking about a lot of stuff. So we have certain rules that regulate the labor law. But I can tell you that we have very strict labor laws. I mean, the rights of the laborers are secure. We have a very good legal system, and things are good.